Okay, we're up to Mishlei Yud Gimel Gimel 13:3. Hold on just one second here. Okay. Noter piv shomer nafsho posik sefasav mechitalo. So not all these words are like common, but anyone want to give it a shot?
I don't know what notes is, but piv shomer nafsho means something mouth watches his soul, or or
Okay.
or it's himself or
Okay.
whatever.
So noter, anyone else want to know what noter is? Noter chesed lalafim, noter avon vafesha, noter teina. So one who guards or protects. I guess let me just look at the BDB, see what the BDB says here. Um, nope, that's a different word. No, why does it keep doing that? Hold on. Notes there. Okay, guard, watch, or keep. Yeah. So it is a for all intents and purposes, it's a synonym for shomer. Okay. So one who guards his mouth guards his soul. Okay, and we'll have an asterisk there because we'll have to talk about that again. Okay, posek sfasa mechitalo. So Mitzudas Sion says posek is inyan psicha v'harchava. So he says it means to open or to widen. Okay. Um, so let's leave it at that. I want to go to the pasuk that he quotes in a little while, but one who opens or widens his lips, mechita lo. Mechita is he translates it as shever. I would translate it also as just destruction. So one who opens his wide lips, I'm gonna have to say it will be a breaking for him. Okay, a breaking or a destruction for him. Okay. All right, so hold on to that for a second. Okay, actually, no, I'm gonna go ahead and do this now. Okay, so first of all, we had a whole discussion about soul last time, right? Nefesh. So the Meiri on this pasuk, not on the last pasuk, says nafsho pirusho gufo, right? That was the point I was making. That nafsho means his body. Lefiha nigla, that's according to the external meaning. Oh, nafsho mamish, or it's referring to his literal soul according to the hidden meaning. And then he gives us a nice explanation. He says, Ki nefesh ye amer pa'am al guf adam. Sometimes nefesh, the word nefesh is said about the body of a person. That's weird. I thought that the shot of that, the soul that he made in Haran, I thought that's like teaching students. Al kol hanefashos asher hayusham, val kol nafshos meis, echad nefesh me'echmas me'os, upam al haratzon, upam al hanefesh yuchedes. So he says nefesh means three things. Okay, soul. Hold on a second here. So nefesh means either soul, sorry, body, desire, or soul. Okay, so let's just keep it actually nefesh in the Hebrew. Just keep it ambiguous here. Okay, so that's nefesh. Okay, so then we get to this word posek. Okay, not like a posek like in halacha. That's with a samech. This is with a sin. So I saw the first thing I saw was this Metzudas or this Malbim. Posek is who harchava hamuguna. It means a disgusting or degrading or like base widening. Okay, and I wasn't sure what that meant. I didn't look at the pasuk yet. So then the BDB says part or open wide, and then it says in our pasuk it's talking about posuk fasav. It says one who's talkative, but then it says this pasuk in Yechezkel. This keeps coming up. Sensu OBSC. So I had to look what that means. It means like an obscene, like in an obscene sense. Okay, so I'll read the pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Sorry, not in Yechezkel. Okay, so it's describing Klal Yisrael as a like as a whore who's like whoring after other gods, and it says El Kol. So it's talking about it's condemning Klal Yisrael for their being licentious and promiscuous with other gods, and using that textual metaphor for avodah zarah. But it says El Kol Rosh Derech Banis Al Derech Banis Ramasech Vatasaavi Es Yafiech. Okay, so you made your beauty abhorrent. Vatafaski es raglaich. You spread your legs l'chol over to anyone who passed by. Vatarbi es taznusayich, and you were excessive in your promiscuity. Okay, so it's talking about like to spread open wide, but the imagery that all the meforshim are trying to conjure up is this thing in Yechezkel of like a prostitute just like giving herself to anybody. Okay, like that kind of. So it's opening or widening, but it's using it in a very like obscene way. Okay, so it's supposed to be like a very emotionally charged sense. Okay, I'm gonna just make a little note of that here. Opens in an obscene way. Okay. Sadion translates this as Hanotzer. I'm going to go ahead and I'll move these later. Hanotzer piv hu shomer nafsho. Okay, so one who guards his mouth. The one who guards his mouth is the one who guards his nefesh. Okay, but then he says like this: V'yesh posik sfasav b'mesh hu mechita lo. There are some openers of lips. Some who open their lips in that which is destructive for them. Okay. So hold on a second here. Where did I get? Okay. And there are I would say cases in which a person opens his lips and it is a destruction for him. So I don't remember if we've talked about this recently in this Monday Night Shiur, but Sadigon has this category of pesukim in Mishlei that he calls the yesh pesukim, where sometimes the pasuk says something in an absolute sense, like an unqualified sense, but really the pasuk is talking about in certain cases. So what he's doing here is he's saying that basically the first half of the pasuk is universal, but the second half is not a universal principle. It is like there are certain cases where this happens, which is not how you would read the pasuk like intuitively. Okay, so that's Sadigon. Then we have in our English here, Art Scroll, one who guards his mouth protects his soul, but one who opens wide his lips, that is his ruin. That's a good translation. Rav Hirsch says, he who guards his mouth protects himself. See, that's like I was saying for the last one, nafshoka means self. So he protects himself. And then who speaks thoughtlessly prepares his own fright. I don't know where he gets fright from. Oh, I know where he gets fright from. That's like Yehoshua bin Nun says, like, al tirav al techas. Don't be afraid, and then don't like tremble in fear. Okay, so prepares his own fright. That's interesting. What is he? Prepares his own fright? So he's adding in the word prepares. So I'm going to add in the word fright here, though. Fright. Okay. Then Alter says, who watches his mouth guards his own life. Who cracks open his lips knows disaster. So he's also trying to deal with this like weird term, disaster. I'll use disaster also. Disaster. Okay. So let me just copy and paste this and move it below and keep it with Sadigon in case we want to see it. I'll move these up. Okay, and let me just try to get this all on one screen. Yeah, so one who guards his mouth guards his nefesh, and nefesh means body, soul, or desire. But one who opens or widens in an obscene way his lips, it will be a breaking or destruction or fright or disaster for him. Yeah, Rivki.
I don't know why I have so much trouble with that. For nefesh, maybe I'm just misremembering, but didn't we say last week that it could also be like the self? Or are you?
Yeah, no, that yeah, I should add that here. Who's just said that? Rav Hirsch said that. Yeah. Yeah. So body, desire, self, or soul. So what are the questions?
Yeah, I think that for the first half I think the first half might be a little, obvious, no?
Okay, you could say that. I'll grant
a little bit. I mean,
yeah.
Of course, if you guard your mouth, you're gonna guard yourself.
Okay.
It's like,
so the first half seems obvious. Okay, so what does it mean? So I mean, obviously the chiddush is going to come from what type of guarding is it talking about? Which let's just translate that. I mean, let's just put that into a question. What does notzer, okay, the first instance of guarding mean? Sorry, well, I guess what is the difference between notzer and shomer? Okay, the second instance. Why did this stop typing? I'm not frozen, am I? No. So it's just word froze. Oh, second instance. Okay. Yeah. I I just thought, okay, I have no idea what noser means, but I was just talking to one of my high school or to the high school class about how like the phrase shomer negia is like a like that's not a halachic category. Like there's a halachic prohibition, but show so it'd be funny to have a like increased chumrah version of called you're not just shomer negia, you're notzer negia. But we have to figure out what notzer means. It just I'm just gonna I'm gonna copyright that term for now. Yeah, Ayala.
So what is the scenario here? Like what exactly
Okay.
is the cause and effect which is playing out?
Yeah, that I think is going to be an important question. So what is the scenario here? And then like what actually I'm going to put those as two separate questions. What are the like what is the cause and effect? Cause and effect in the first half and in the second half. Yeah. I want to interrupt for 1 second. I was actually just reviewing the first 15 minutes of Johnny's Brisker Derek methodology video. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it. He's talking about asking questions, and he says something which is kind of implicit in like everything that we do here, but I just wanted to but he said it explicitly. He said, you were saying when you analyze something, you have to just ask all possible questions. And he said that the purpose of asking the questions is not to answer them. The purpose of, I mean, obviously, answering questions is good, but the purpose of asking the questions is to open up the paths of thinking. I just wanted to state that because that's obviously a big part of every Mishlei class here. But and if we had time, by the way, I decided very early on not to do this. Maybe I did in the first couple of shiurim, but like we would take every idea that we come up with and like go through all the questions and see what we answer. But that would just take too long. Yeah. Okay. Rivki.
So I have two questions. Number one, I think, is related to what Ayala just asked.
Yeah.
If in terms of the scenario, is it the same situation that they're both in, or is it two separate situations?
Okay, that is a good question. Usually, I would say that is we should assume it's the same scenario. But here, I do feel like there's room for saying that they're two different things, especially according to Sadigon, because Sadigon is explicitly saying there are cases in which he opens his lips and says destruction, which means that it's not all the time. Yeah. So, are the two halves talking about two different scenarios?
Yeah, and then the other question was, is there a specific reason why he's not using a character in either half?
Okay, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I guess is this talking about is either half talking about a specific Mishleic archetype? If so, why doesn't he specify? And if not, why not? Yeah, I just want to quickly review the last pasuk in case it's relevant. Last pasuk was mi prifi ish yochotov nefesh bogdim chamas, right? So there too, we said that it is taught. Well, the pasuk says, "From the fruit of a man's mouth you will eat good, but the soul of bogdim violence." So the first half also seems to be talking about the last pasuk also seems to be talking about a non-specific type. Okay. Next is my dad. You're muted. You have to unmute. You have to unmute. Oh, there we go. Okay.
So we were having a conversation not long ago, and we were talking about Elon Musk and getting in trouble with what he said, and then trying to apologize for it right afterwards. And it seems like the second half is saying, this is destructive. You can't repair the damage.
All right, so I'm gonna actually let's ask that as a question, okay? Which is, what does the pasuk? What is the word? What? Okay, well, I guess what is the consequence in the second half? Okay, what does mechita mean? And then we had these four translations here. Yeah. So what type of and what does it mean and what does it imply? Yeah. What does it mean? Or say that. And what level of damage does it imply? Right? Like, is it, for example, irreparable damage? Yeah. Okay. Ariel.
Yeah. I guess two questions. One, what is the second half? What does it mean? Meaning like how wide is wide, or
Okay, yeah. So what does it mean? Oops, sorry. This is going to be here. And you know what? I'm going to move this to the top. And then what does it mean to posik svas, sorry, I'm so used to typing it that way. Posik svasav, to open his lips wide, right? Like, and also like, I think we should throw this in here. Why use such a weird term? And in fact, I just want to double check that this is a weird term because it looked like this is only used twice. Yeah, okay, so literally the only two places in Tanakh this is used is that pasuk in Cheskel. I guess that explains why everyone is quoting it, because it is only used here and there. So that's very strange. And actually, so here's the weird thing. The weird thing is, assuming that Shlomo HaMelech wrote this pasuk in Mishlei, which we have, every reason to assume. So then Yechezkel is referencing Shlomo, if he's referencing. If not, it could be that the word existed beforehand. But like the fact that the meforshim are referencing us to Yechezkel seems to be the other way around. Yeah.
And my second question is, it's interesting that in the first half of the pasuk, it has like two. Well, actually, I don't know if it's such a big question, but maybe my question is like, what's the opposite of the two halves?
Okay, actually, you know what? Before you say that, I just realized that you can also translate the pasuk, the first half, differently. I should mention this. Alternative translation of first half is one who guards his nefesh guards his mouth. Okay.
How do you get that?
Well, that's how it is in Hebrew. Anytime you have like two, like, things like that, like a subject and a predicate, then as long as the grammatical structures are right, then I'm not explaining it clearly. Hold on. Like this is actually not so close to the parsha, but Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, I think, points this out. I don't know if he's the only one, but that's just where I first saw it in Toldos, when it's talking about hold on. Yeah, when it's talking about the prophecy to Rivka about her kids, it says, so it says, V'rav Yavod Sa'ir. So one way to read that is the older one will serve the younger one, but the other way to read it is Rav Ya'avod Sa'ir, and the older one, the younger one will serve. So it could be read both ways, I think there's probably easier explanation for why this could be read both ways. I'm just not being articulate tonight. Okay, so you said, what was your question again?
I guess it's not no. Well, this way of translating it, it's not really a question.
No, you can ask me on the other way. I just got distracted by my recognition here.
It's really what's the opposite of the two halves? Is really what it is.
What is the opposite of the two halves? Meaning, how are the two halves opposites?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How are the two halves opposites? I don't know if Zoom changed the setting. It's very annoying now. When you raise your hand, it puts a little notification in the middle of my screen. Never seen that before. I gotta find a way to turn that off. But okay, all right, that's not gonna work now. Okay, anyway, yeah, Rifki.
So on Sadyagones, maybe I just like missed something when you were translating, but why is the last word me? Like, where do we get me? And like,
oh, sorry, not from. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. That was a typo.
Okay.
What does he actually say? Mechitala for him. Yeah, for him. Okay. Ayala.
Okay, this is a minor question, which I don't think we asked yet, but what is the difference between piv and lips?
Right. That is a good minor question. That is in that's in both of them. Yeah. Okay. So, what is the difference between mouth in the first half and lips in the second half? Yeah. Okay. Noter piv shomer nafsho. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I guess who's the audience? What's the subject of the pasuk?
Yeah.
You know,
Is the
basic
audience?
questions.
What is the subject? And what is the practical application? Yeah. Yeah, Rivki?
Did we go over what instances noter is used in?
No, let's see. Noter is definitely rarer than shomer, but I think it's still going to be too many instances to be able to see. No, it's not a ton. Oh, Tehillim uses it a lot, and Mishlei uses it a lot. That's very interesting. So where does it use it in? Let's just look at the instances in Chumash. Oh, one is the one that I said, Nozer Chesed Lalafim, that God preserves kindness for kindnesses for generations, which plain shot means that the merit of the kindness is he preserves, or when he gives a kindness, when God gives a kindness, then it lasts for generations. And in Devarim, this is both in Haazino, so it's poetic. He guards it like the pupil of his eye. And then Uvrischa Yinsoru, and they guard his covenant. So it doesn't really give us a sense of that. And in Mishlei, I doubt we're gonna get clues from Mishlei. Tehillim, okay, a lot of Tehillim ones. Mishlei, okay. Yeah, this is not gonna help us. Linsor Ochos Mishpat, to guard the ways of truth. Tavuna tinsarecha, understanding will guard you or protect you. Mitzvosa yitzor libecha, let your heart guard my mitzvos. So these are all very abstract, so I don't really think we're gonna be able to figure it out there. So good question though, but
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I don't know if like this is the point of the question on it, but do you have like any, I guess, idea or direction of what that difference would be? I've just never heard it used.
You know how I would, my intuition is that it's a synonym for shomer. And that the only reason why it's not repeating it is because it would be dumb if it said shomer piv shomer nafsho. Not dumb, but it would be like not poetic, you know? Yeah. It's funny though, because in English, I feel like we strive to do proverbs with repetitions of the same word, you know? But I feel like it's not poetic if you're trying to like do it in Tanakh. Yeah. But that's my intuition. But if I had to say intuition for what the difference, if there is a difference between shomer and noter, I would say that noter is a stronger thing than shomer. I don't know where I got that from, but that's just my intuition. So you asked me my intuition, no source. Okay, I think those are the main questions. So let me post them in the chat, and then we will have our thinking minute while I fill up my water, which I forgot to fill up before shiur. Okay, so there are 5 of them. Oops. And here are more.
Yeah, just on the noter versus shomer, like I'm looking more in depth than like the Al HaTorah dictionary.
Yeah.
Like shomer seems to, be more like lighter, like keep, observe, all these things. But when you look at noter, it's almost like it says a guard from dangers, guard with fidelity, keep observe of,
So
keep guard, keep secret. It's almost like more, I don't know.
So I just remembered that we can look at the Malbim. He also says Hanoter hu yoser min hashomer. One who guards is greater than one who protects, right? Or the way that I'm saying it. And the Ariel saying Kila hishamra medivri tapuchos. Oh no, this is now he's going to go into his particular explanation. Yeah, so just guard. So is there an English word that is guard, but like implies like really, really, really heavy guarding? Anyone?
There's a word I'm thinking of, but I can't remember. I feel like it starts with an S, to like really like watch
Safeguard?
something.
No. Let's look at thesaurus. Guard. Verb. Defend, escort, keep, look after, observe, oversee, patrol, safeguard. Secure. Secure might be good, but secure has too much of like a bitachon type connotation, like with batach. Superintend, supervise, shield, preserve, oversee. Yeah, all right, fine. So we'll just say like one who I'll say one who safeguards his mouth guards his nefesh. Okay, that'll be our
I mean, I have like 20 words from ChatGPT.
Are any of them good?
But
Are any of them good?
I'm not sure. One is like fortified, secure, patrolled, protected, defended, warded, safeguarded, sentinel. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not very good.
Girded. Like,
No.
not
Okay.
good.
Yeah, that's the problem. I was just talking about this in with some teachers. We were talking about English, and that there's a certain category of student who will either use a thesaurus or who will, well, yeah, I mean, I guess use a thesaurus or use ChatGPT, and will look for synonyms, thinking that you could just swap them out, and think that they're making their writing fancier, and like it actually does the exact opposite because it exposes that they don't really know how to use the words, So
Yeah, I used to do that
yeah, right.
in school when I was like in 8th grade.
Yeah. Okay, so let us take our thinking minute. I have to just go fill up this water. So you guys can think while I fill up the water. Oops. Yeah, I don't think it's good. Okay. I mean, I feel like you definitely have to take a stance on nefesh, right? Like, I think like that has to be not the starting point of where your idea comes from, but you have to like clarify that whenever you say your idea. Yeah, Rifki.
So my idea is, I think more specifically on Sadio, because I was also thinking before we even translated, which is funny, but my intuition was similar to his.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that this is basically just speaking about for one person, teaching us about who we should speak to and in what situation. So I think it's really like about giving us context on when it's quote unquote safe to say something and when it isn't. And I was thinking more, not just anything, like I think that would be too broad, but I think specifically more things that are, I guess, sensitive. So like, I don't know, an example I think that I have, which could illustrate both halves, is actually like a real world example. So in my placement, I'm a case management intern and I have a client. Obviously, I can't give any details, but
I was gonna say, don't make the mistake here. Yeah.
But I have a client who obviously there's a ton of background. Long story short, we were in a meeting with her and she was really, really, really upset. I had never seen anyone that upset. And basically she was just like yelling and screaming and like literally throwing things. And it was honestly like, it was a pretty crazy experience.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And I guess my point is it reminded me of this pasuk, because if she was in a certain space that was, I don't know if that would ever be appropriate, but at least more appropriate. I don't think that it would have affected like people's, because there was someone there that it really mattered what that person thought of her. And it wouldn't have negatively affected his perception of her. And he literally told me afterwards, he was like, whatever, again, I can't say so much, but he was like, that really is not going to bode well for her.
Yeah.
I think that this is really just saying like, kind of know your audience of like, don't just go and like start bad mouthing or, just using negative speech or making yourself or other people look bad, because that's not going to work out for you. And at the end of the day, if you're not watching your mouth and what you're saying and how you're saying it could really end up hurting you. So I think it's specifically about that type of situation as opposed to just anything that you say ever.
Okay. All right. So so the practical message is to be watchful regarding, I guess, the what you say in front of whom, because all it takes is one instance of like a like self-destructive speech to cause actual self-destruction, right? In other words, so that's going with Sadio, because he's saying that basically, I mean, I think Sadio is doing an interesting thing by making the first half a perpetual thing and the second half a one instance, because with speech, you need to practice constant vigilance in being aware of who you're talking to and what you're saying in order to prevent that one time that it could cause like huge destruction, you know. And I think it's a good setup in that way. I also think, and maybe this is reading too much into it, but especially I feel like I'm reading modern I guess knowledge or cultural like values into it. But the whole example that it gave of like a woman who just like sleeps with anyone, you know, that's a similar situation like that also. Like yeah, maybe a woman could do that and like get lucky and nothing bad will happen, but like all it takes is like one unwanted pregnancy or one like STD or whatever to like completely change the course of her life, you know. So it's just like the like what I'm getting here is like the indiscriminate nature of like the prostitute that he's describing fits with the indiscriminate talker that you're describing, you know. I'm just gonna make a note. I know you didn't say that, but I'm gonna make a note of that. This fits with the connotation of posek, which conjures up an image of an indiscriminate, indiscriminate sleeping around, which can also have like dire, like disastrous consequences as a result of one like illicit union.
Yeah. Also, just to expand a little more on like the first half, I was thinking that like similar to what you were saying, that it's always a good thing to practice like watching your speech, because it's very easy to make someone upset if you're not that you have to be walking on eggshells, but that you just have to be able to know how to relate to other people and what person is more sensitive, what isn't. And then that will also bleed into like, it's just like a natural effect is that if you're already doing that, then especially in situations when you should be doing it, then it will happen.
Okay, good. That's a good point. If you're already in the habit of doing that, then you'll especially be vigilant when the situation is high risk. I feel like I mentioned, okay, I have no idea whether this was during like the COVID like haze or if this is doing AP English, but do you remember something about, who was it? It was one of the prominent women in government that we read. It was either Madeleine Albright or Margaret Thatcher. What was that? Yeah, one of them, or maybe it was someone else also. Someone was interviewing them. Was interviewing this woman, and she was already old, and she took a long time to respond. And he thought that she was like, just old, and and then someone brought up to him afterwards that if you listen to interviews with her from like when she was really young, she did the same thing. She would. Do you remember who it was?
I just can't believe you said that, because I was literally gonna give it as an example. It's Ruth
okay.
And I was literally thinking that I was.
Yeah, sorry. Did you say it was Margaret Thatcher?
No, it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I knew it was some prominent woman. Yeah, so definitely Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Right. I remember when this came up, but yeah, right. So and the I'll see if I can find where I saw that, but like, yeah, it was a thing that she realized that like she got into the habit of being careful to stop and pause and then speak deliberately afterwards. Same thing with my I think I also brought this up recently. My graduate school mentor, Rabbi Dr. Chaim Feuerman, that there's wait time, and there's this technique that he calls wait time. One technique of wait time, which I have gotten better at, is when the teacher asks a question and a bunch of kids like raise their hands, wait a full 2 counts before you call on anyone, because what happens is there are kids who are smart but just don't respond immediately. And there are kids who respond immediately and are and say dumb things, So like what happens is the teacher ends up calling on all the fast kids, but not necessarily on all the kids who have something good to contribute. So, and there are also kids who are intimidated because they see everyone raising their hands fast. So if you ask a question as a teacher, you wait 2 full seconds and then you start calling people. That's not relevant to here. What's relevant here is the other one, which I don't do, which is wait time 2, which is when a student gives an answer, the teacher should wait for 2 full seconds before responding. And I used to watch Dr. Foreman do this, and it is very weird because it's not, people don't do this in conversation, but what it does is it creates, first of all, it gives the impression that the teacher is thinking about what the student is saying, but more importantly, it actually allows the teacher time to think about what the student is saying, And if you ever have a conversation with someone who does this, which sounds like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing, then like it kind of forces both participants to engage in more thoughtful discourse, So that's like, easier said than done. And maybe that's the problem, is things are easier to say than to do. But yeah. Okay, good. Rivki, I think this is a really good full idea. The only thing I just want to clarify is I think we could also answer noter versus shomer. Shomer would be like just, it'll protect you from harm. Okay. And I think self is probably the best translation here, right? Like protect. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then noter would seem to just be referring to whatever this internal process is of like, whether it's slowing down, whether it's like thinking about who you're talking to, whether it's thinking about the consequences, whatever that process is. And I don't even know if our pasuk is stating how to do that, or if it's just stating that like, it's necessary to do. And the posik svasav is going to be the complete opposite, the person who just speaks completely thoughtlessly or is always talking. Like, I don't know if it means that that in any given instance, he just opens his mouth wide, or if it means he's just always talking indiscriminately. Yeah. And by the way, just to expand this into like modern applications, I mean, I think like, everyone here is aware of this, but like, there are definitely like kids who are totally unaware that they leave a social media trail, and that things that they say or post or whatever can be there, in a permanent way or in a way that could be discovered afterwards. And you see these people, people who are like, their careers are rising, and then they get in trouble for something they tweeted in like 2006, So this is not just for verbal speech. It's also for any communication that's like accessible to people, Yeah. Okay. So what's interesting about this. So let's just subject this to Ariel's question. This seems obvious. Okay. So can we just highlight what is the chiddush here? I'm just going to write that as a question here. So this is a true idea, but it seems obvious. What is the chiddush? Yeah, answer.
I think that my response, because I was also thinking about that, is that I think that a normal person's, that's a funny thing to say, but I think a normal person's intuition is to, it's almost like extremes. Like I think oftentimes extremes of like, okay, well, if I am going to be careful, then I'm not going to share anything with anyone ever. And then the opposite side, well, you know what? Like, I don't really care. So like, I'm just going to talk to anyone about anything and it doesn't really matter. And I think that is a very human nature type of response. I think that we really do operate like that. So I think that's where this pasuk is coming and saying, no, that's stupid. You shouldn't do that, because life is very, I guess, nuanced, and we have to be nuanced because that's just how it is.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, definitely there is a tendency to go to extremes, but I think there's a problem with the idea on that statement. Isn't the first half telling you to go to an extreme?
I don't see it as an extreme, though.
Well, isn't it saying that like, I mean, the way that we're explaining it, I thought we're saying that you have to be very, very watchful, because like one misstep could like be a destruction.
I guess I don't see it as maybe it's just a fault in how I see it. I see it as more of a practice in midos training as opposed to an extreme. Like, I don't think that it's saying that you should, I think an extreme would be to say you can never speak to anyone. About
No, you're right. It's not extreme in behavior. So I'm going to give my answer, which I'm going to use the word extreme. So it sounds like I'm disagreeing with what you're saying, but I think it's just a different approach. Is I do think that it is saying that you should treat. I think there's a tendency to regard. I think there's a tendency to only speak in like high danger mode if the situation is obviously high danger. But what this is saying is you need to be aware that any situation of speaking can be a high danger situation, and be vigilant in those cases as well. I'll give you an example of this, which is, I have to do this as a teacher, and I'm not saying I'm always successful at doing this, but like, especially in a high school teaching situation where like anything that and I do this consciously, is that anything I say, I have to think to myself, what if a student misquotes it or like partially quotes it and then just says it to a parent, and then it leads to a whole thing. And that's happened before. I most egregious example of this was like I got a call from, or maybe Mrs. Eisman got a call from a parent who said that it was from a mother whose daughter, who by the way is not a daughter who pays attention in class. The daughter said to the mother, Rabbi Shem has told us that women don't have to cover their hair. Okay. And so I literally just sent the mother the PowerPoint, in which in big font in the middle of the screen says, women must cover their hair. Like the student got the exact opposite, So like that's like a kind of like a tame thing. Or today in Q&A, I'm in Connecticut right now, and in Q&A, I forgot when I started doing this, but students would ask about reincarnation, So whenever I do a thing on reincarnation, the first slide now is always the English definition of reincarnation and the English definition of resurrection. Okay. And I always make it very clear, resurrection of the dead is a fundamental principle of Judaism. Reincarnation is a machlokes. And I go over that point again and again and again. Okay. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about subtle things. Like you guys don't even know what I don't say. Okay. I'd be curious if you actually search, but I don't think you can do that. I never use the word beautiful in responding to a female student's homework assignment, or any word that could vaguely be interpreted as like flirting, because any little thing like that could go very disastrous if it's like taken in the wrong way, And then also just very careful, like what, so like, politicians have to do this in their sphere. Like there's different areas where like you really have to like exercise. You have to treat it as though just to borrow like a weird analogy from the last pasuk. Last pasuk was talking about like eating the fruit of your mouth. This is like your words could produce a landmine that you step on, like that's like the mechita thing here. Yeah. Okay. I lost track of whether Ariel was responding to this or if he had his own idea, or my dad is responding to this or having his own idea.
I'm not responding to this, but I
Okay.
think your dad may be responding to this.
Are you?
I was responding to this.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So maybe it's not so obvious. You might think that just guarding what you say will make will make business go well, or guarding what you say will make people like you, or guarding what you say will have positive consequences in other circumstances. But this is saying that it goes deeper than that. That it's guarding your very being, according to one of the
right. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to combine those two and just in what I write for his answer, which is like, okay, here's how I'll put it. Okay, like the Hava Mina. Okay, is that you can go into, like, you can switch into high danger mode when you sense a high danger situation, right? This pasuk teaches you that any situation can potentially be a high danger situation. So you need to train yourself in the habit of being vigilant in speech. So in other words, the chiddush is in, the chiddush is in how you prepare for this enemy, the enemy being like this unforeseen consequence, and like you need to prepare for it constantly so that you'll be ready when the time comes.
Also,
okay, all right, yeah.
Just to add something, when they say guarding your lips, it's not just what you say, it's what you hold back and do not say.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. That's a good point. Yeah, guarding is more about what you don't say. Yeah. Okay, Ariel, you have a separate approach?
Can I add to this one point quickly?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry, I didn't see Ayala's thing. Yeah.
Just another, like, not anything so new, but just it stuck out to me with your example that I wanted to highlight. Just what you're
Yeah.
saying of like thinking about it in advance. That it doesn't just
Yeah.
mean in the moment, like being aware of what you're
That's
saying, but it
true.
means like thinking through what
Mhm.
would be the landmine and like
Okay, right.
specifically
That's also
avoiding it.
true. Right. This also involves a premeditatio malorum, which is thinking about the bad stuff ahead of time before you get into the situation. Yeah. What could go wrong, right? Yeah, okay, good. Ariel, you're up.
Yeah.
Wait, can I ask one?
Oh yeah,
sorry,
sure,
I
go
have one
ahead.
question on that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, just with what we were saying, it seems to me, I just want to understand this in a way that seems like not impossible, because I definitely do know that there is like a certain reality that person can't be on guard all the time.
Okay, good.
So what are we saying in a way that is actually like an applicable, something we can do?
Yeah. So this was Rabbi Moskowitz's objection to any pasuk like this, okay, which is that it's impossible. Okay. And I don't remember the exact way that he answered it, but if I had to what the impression I get is he said that the only way you could do this is the same way you change any other thing, which is by going over example after example after example of types of misspeaking or situations in which you misspeak, and like what, figuring out what the causes are, figuring out like what your triggers are, figuring out what your blind spots are. So for example, for some people it's, in a relationship, then they will, when things get when they get angry, they'll try to deliberately hurt the other person, or when people get angry, they will like get into a very victim mentality, and the victim mentality is what makes them say something that is not good. Or when people are very excited about an idea, they might divulge information that is sensitive information. So you have to see like, when do you fall into the, well, again, when do other people fall into these pitfalls, and like be aware that those are dangerous scenarios. Then when do you fall into these pitfalls, and then you set up warnings to yourself, and sometimes it's very simple. Like sometimes people can realize, like, I'm thinking about East of Eden, that if they drink alcohol, then it unleashes their speech. I think there's pesukim and Mishlei about that with the late and wine, so like I'd say that the steps are like, just go over case by case by case by case, then figure out what your personal blind spots and triggers are, and then like set up mechanisms to prevent you from falling into those triggers or falling into those blind spots. Yeah, because you're right, you can't. And look, there's also habits, like if you want to do a Dr. Foreman type thing where you do the pause, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like that you could do that, but that is a much harder thing to do. But it also, it prevents you from it makes it so you don't, a good habit makes it so that you don't have to exert effort, right? Like an example of that, example of this is they say that Abraham Lincoln, whenever he was angry at one of his opponents, then he would write a full letter that was very, very angry, and then he would fold it up and put it in his desk, and then write a second letter and then send the second one. So like he knew that his way of doing it is like get it out of his system and then do another thing. So like, I was talking to you, David, about like sometimes a person can do something to upset you, and like Marcus Aurelius' thing was wait 10 days, and if it still bothers you, then like then deal with it, and but most of the time you'll just forget about it. So like there are other strategies of like just setting up default habits that prevent you from falling into these situations. Yeah,
and then, so just to clarify what you're saying, so once you start seeing these things more frequently, you're saying you will build an unconscious muscle towards seeing these things,
that's
and then
Rabbi Moskowitz's
unconsciously
approach
be able to start.
That's Rabbi Moskowitz's approach to behavior change in general. Is his whole approach was, don't try to change things, just go over the consequences and the ideas, and eventually you'll change. I'm agreeing with that, but I'm also saying that there are conscious practices that you can set yourself up as safeguards. And I think the pasuk suggests that, because it says like notes there, Piv, Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. Ayala is doing party symbol, which apparently they updated the party symbol. Now it has animation. Yeah.
Okay, I was just gonna add just another practical thing which I found sometimes work for me is like like in conversations a lot of times, I think like when you have to like wait your turn to speak, kind of, you end up having like an extra second naturally to think. I think usually you'll just be like rehearsing in your head what you're gonna say, or like hopefully listening to the other person if you do that.
Right.
But like I found that's a good time to like use that as a habit cue to be like, okay, wait, what am I gonna say? And should I say it?
Right. That is good. Yeah. It's funny because what you're describing is different than the type of like thoughtless rehearsing what you're going to say. Like there's a thoughtless rehearsing what you're going to say, and then there's like a like reviewing what you're going to say, you know, ahead of time. Yeah. Okay, Ariel, you're up.
All right. I was just reviewing what I was gonna say.
Ah.
Okay, so
And you were listening.
there you go. All right, so I want to say that the subject of this pasuk is that speech can either, you know, propel you towards success or towards your detriment, right? And I want to kind of like piggyback off of something Rav Pesach mentioned a while ago. I don't remember if it was at
was it the Oneg?
Maybe, yeah. I think it might have been at the Oneg actually.
Yeah.
But he says something along the lines of like the reason why there are certain isurim that you can't announce that you've done is because you can't give people ideas. You know, like personal, like there, like I think there are like personal, like chatam that you do.
Are you talking about like the halacha that when you do video, when you confess, then you're supposed to confess sins, interpersonal sins, but you're not supposed to confess sins between man and God? Yeah.
Yeah, because it shouldn't give people ideas. And through that, like I was thinking about speech and how speech can affect you as an individual,
right?
Personally,
right. So that's talking about like your soul.
Yeah, your well, yeah. I it's funny. Like it's funny. I was debating whether or not nefesh could be translated as soul or desires.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but
I can see desire also.
Yeah, so
I want to say the only reason, just to clarify, I think the type of desire here, it means like when saying protecting your desires, the word desire here is like means like your wants, not like your emotions. So I think the soul would be better for what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to be the example that I'm going to use, like, you know, like the prostitute or whatever, like it's going to be very, you know, into the desire, but like I think it could apply to both, really.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to say that it has to do with you and yourself. It doesn't really have to do with speech in relation to other people, although it can also be applied to that. But I want to say that, like, you know, if you, I'll start with the second half of the present. I think it's easier. But like, if you know, just open up your lips, meaning like you open it up like it's like a free for all, and you say whatever, and like let's say you speak about how, I don't know, like going to prostitutes is okay, or like whatever, or like robbing banks are okay, or like, or whatever it is, like you're making a statement, and like it kind of like makes it you know, it kind of makes it real. Right. In a way that like it kind of like it's out in reality, and it kind of validates it, and your speech is kind of like affecting you, even though you may say it as a joke, even though you may say whatever, or like you, and I don't even think you have to go as far as to say that like, oh, you know, like do this, that, or that. It could just be, you know, within the realm of that speech as well, you know.
Right.
And like I think like posek, like open wide, it's like it's like a free for all. You just say whatever comes to your mind, and like there's no, you know, there's no filter.
Right.
You know, and for the first half of the pasuk, it's interesting that it says, you know, safeguard, and I think that the chiddush is that we don't normally view our speech as something that can affect our, you know, nefesh. It's almost like, you know, it's funny, like up until now, I've always thought that like, you know, from my nefesh, like will result in how I speak, but it's possible to think that like, no, like really how you speak can affect your nefesh as well.
Yeah.
So I think like if you safeguard your mouth, like from danger, you know, like notes are pivot, and the danger is from inappropriate speech or any speech that can affect you negatively, it can, it'll just naturally protect your nefesh.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'll reiterate it in a second, but Rivki, I see your party sign. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that I really, really like this idea. And I think that it reminded me of something that you told us in high school. And I think we actually mentioned pretty recently in Mishlei that like, even just you saying like, oh, I'm having a bad day versus I'm having like a bad morning, like that affects you. So I think like it's very true. And like, even like psychologically, like it really does affect how you think of yourself, how you think of other people. Like, I think also it works in Lashon Hara. Like that's like a great example of this.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Okay, so so Ariel is saying that this is not talking about speech to other people, but the effects of your speech on your own soul. Talking about bad things or averos can like open up paths in the mind and the emotions towards those actions by like normalizing them or making them real or validating them. Yeah. Example of this that is the Rambam talks about a lot is on the Rambam's whole discourse about his position on listening to music with lyrics is that he says it's like a horrible thing to be listening to songs even if they're written in Hebrew that like are praising like bad character traits and bad actions and lifestyles, and like you see that in the society now of like all the lyrics that people listen to with that are like planting certainly bad values, but like even let's say like songs, I will give you examples, but I don't listen to songs with lyrics very often, but like listening to songs that portray certain ideas about love, romance, sex, relationships that just get into your head, and you end up perceiving the whole world through those categories without even realizing that you programmed your own thoughts. Yeah, Ariel, you want to add something to your idea?
Yeah, I actually have a question on the idea.
Okay.
I feel like there are certain times where you, in order to like tackle an internal struggle that you have or whatever it is, like you have to talk about those things.
Yeah, definitely.
The question is, how do you, within this idea, I mean, you obviously you can't just avoid it completely. Like what, meaning, is there a middle ground? Is there
I mean, I think you answered it. I think the pasuk is only condemning poseks fasav, which is just an indiscriminate, like saying whatever you're thinking or whatever you're feeling, or the person who also, I think in your idea is like poseks fasav means someone who is not aware that what you say is going to affect your own emotions. But if you're doing it in a measured, limited, practical, restrained way, aware of how your speech can affect things, then I don't think that's the second half of the pasuk. I think that is a necessary thing.
Right. So I guess like the question is like, what's the difference in the second half of the pasuk and the first half of the pasuk? Right. It seems a little the same, just in different.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is. Oh, by the way, I just thought of something obvious. By the way, Rivki's interpretation of nefsho being self is very, very implicit from the puzzle because it says mechita lo. It would be destruction for him. So the first half is just a synonym with that. But I mean, Ariel still works also. But actually, yeah, lo could also be to it, right? To the soul. Yeah. So I think the key element we get from the first half of the pasuk is the fact that we're talking about the nefesh, right, and the effect of speech on the nefesh, and that you need to exercise guardianship. No, so okay, this is an answer. Okay, there's three categories. Okay, the extreme category in the second half is someone who is completely oblivious to this idea and completely indiscriminate in what they say. They're going to end up destroying their soul. Okay, then you've got the person in the middle who might not just say anything that comes to his mind, but he's also unaware that you need to protect what you say. You need to guard what you say, you know? So he might say stuff that is, let's say like Rivki's idea, like, or the Rivki's example, saying I'm having a bad day. That's not like indulging in bad values or like promoting Averos, but the only person who would say I'm having a bad day is someone who doesn't realize that saying it is going to affect their day, you know? So that's like the person in the middle. Person in the first half of the pasuk is realizing, no, the way what I allow to come through my mouth will shape the way that I relate to everything. It'll imprint my soul, you know? So that the first person is like, is taking like positive, like conscious control over what they're saying with this awareness that they're going to affect their soul in a certain way. And the second half is the person who's totally unaware of this phenomenon. And then the person who the pasuk is talking to is someone who is also unaware of this phenomenon and like might slip into the second half, but could cultivate the first half. Yeah. All right. This is a good idea. I like it. Okay. Let's look at some meforshim and then call it a night. I think Rבינו Yona says something similar to what somebody's saying. Let's see. I think I remember it being a good thing. Okay. Notes piv shomer nafsho. Shuhu. I'll just translate. Oh, sorry. Why did I skip Mitzudas David? Sorry, Mitzudas David. We have to give you the first crack at this, like we usually do. Notes piv miladabir davar hanesar. That's like Ariel's maybe. From talking about something prohibited. Okay, and then posek opens wide. Hamarchiv svasav, one who opens wide his lips, ledabir kol ha'ola alibo, to say anything that occurs to him. Hi mechitalo, this will destroy him. Yeah. So I'm guessing that he is taking Ariel's approach because he's talking about things that are prohibited. But is this just Ariel's idea, or is there some other nuance that we're getting from this? One thing, by the way, I think, I mean, we've said this before, but lips are like the external surface level speech. So I think that lips pairs well with pair of lips. I think lips pair well with the type of like thoughtless speech that we're talking about. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's more, I think that it's like similar to Ariel, but I feel like what he's saying is more like, oh, well, like prohibited that could get him in trouble. Like, let's say like he knows something about, I don't know, like a crime or whatever. And then like that person, it wouldn't tell the wrong people because they know that it's something bad. Whereas I feel like Ariel's was more of like topical. No,
I don't think that's what davar nesar means. Davar nesar is something that's prohibited, you know, like
what
usher.
do you think he means by prohibited though? Because I feel like what Ariel was saying doesn't translate to being prohibited. I feel like it's just bad. No,
I thought what Ariel was saying was including prohibited stuff. I mean, that was like the example he gave with the talking about Averos.
okay, never mind then. I guess I
Yeah.
wasn't really thinking about it like that.
Yeah. I don't know why it says ne'asar instead of davar ha'asur, something that has been made prohibited. But I'm not sure. Let's do Rבינו Yona. I'm not seeing anything in the Mitzudas David. I mean, obviously Mitzudas David has a good idea, but I think we've already covered it with Ariel. Okay, Rבינו Yona. Okay, so he says Yona. Okay, one who guards his mouth, guards his soul. I'm sorry, the wrong font here. Okay, one who guards his mouth, guards his soul. Shuhu shomer es piv shlo yiftachenu ad haskamas halev. Okay, I think this might be like Rivki's. Let's see. At least it starts off that way. That he guards his mouth so that he doesn't open it without the consent of his mind. Okay, meaning you need your mind to give the green light, and then you speak. Okay, so I think this is a typo. I don't think that should say shomer or not. Oh, unless that's. I think this is supposed to be the end of the previous sentence. Shomer nafsho. So, he guards his soul. Okay, then, but one who opens wide his lips, it is destruction for him. Okay. Sheharagil spasav, shehirgil spasav lios bershus atman. Oh, I love that language. Hold on a second. Why is this switching fonts on me? that he trains his lips, or habituates his lips, lihios brishus asman, to be in like to be in their own. Oh, there's a better way to say this. I don't want to say in control of themselves. That implies that they have control. Like to be under their own volition. L'daber mibli hakdamas machshavah, to speak without any prior thought v'iyun or analysis. O levate kol ha'ola, or to say whatever occurs to him. Okay, I don't know what the or is. So destruction for him, mechita yira. Oh, so he says mechita is yira. Hold on a second. This is a different thing. Mechita for him. So he says mechita means what's going on here? Mechita means fear or fright. Yesh alav lihisyare minezek svasav. He should be afraid of the damage of the harm caused by his lips. Kasher yiyar mina echad mina oivim. Just like he is afraid of one of his enemies. Kisfasa virshuso. Because I can't type tonight. Because his lips, I think this is a typo, or no, I think it's a mistake in the thing. I think it's because his lips are not in his control. All right, so he's basically saying, like, if you're the type of person who has trained yourself to think without speaking, to speak without thinking, you should treat your lips as like an enemy, okay? And like, don't let them talk without your consent. So like, I mean, the imagery here I'm getting is, let's say you have a loudmouth friend who's always like blabbing and saying things that are inappropriate or like divulging secrets. So you're very worried that they're going to say something that they shouldn't say. You should view your own lips that way, your own mouth. And I think this is actually like, so, okay, what's the chiddush here? I think this is like a really powerful chiddush. Because I think that, let me go back. The subject matter and the practical message is like what Rivki's saying, right? That this is about someone who is speaking and not really watchful about what they say. But Rבינו Yona, I think, is taking an important step and giving us an idea from a different direction. Yeah, Ayala?
I think we maybe think of like our words and speeches like an extension of our thoughts and ourselves. And he's saying that like they can take their own life, sort of.
Like
that doesn't, that's not their phrasing, not their own life, but like they can take a life of their own, kind
of. Take on a life of their own. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. I think that has to do with it. So I think what he's giving us here is, Rivki.
I don't know if this is like similar to what Ayala just said or what you're literally about to say, but also maybe that like we assume that because like our lips are our own, quote unquote, like they're on our face, like whatever, that we always have control over them because they're ours. But I think it's not true.
Exactly, right. So the chiddush here, I think, is a new behavior modification technique, which is to like, there is a level of habit where you lose control of the faculty in question. And if the loss of that faculty can cause harm, then you need to view it as an external enemy that you need to control. Okay, so like, this is not true of all habits. Like I think we're talking about habits that, like, speech has a way of like attracting harm, like the only other case of I can think of for this is there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, Taivas atel timisenu ki me'anu yadav lasos, that the lust of a lazy person will kill him because his hands refuse to work. And Rבינו Yona says a similar idea there. He says that the lazy person has so habituated himself in his laziness that he can't control his hands to like do what they need to do anymore. So here it's like this person has trained himself so much to speak without thinking that the lips have become their own like have become like their own force. So let me include what Rivki was saying. We tend to think of our lips being on our side because they're ours. So the remedy suggested by Rבינו Yona is to view these lips as like freelance agents that will turn on you unless you stop them. Yeah. And I think by externalizing them in your mind, you can better anticipate like their the mistakes they'll make. Like I'll give you an analogy. I mean, I've never experienced this, obviously, but like when you read about people who are worsening in Parkinson's, and they have like convulsions or tremors, they don't control their their emotions, and they learn that if they're gonna, let's say, like be, I don't know, like moving around near something fragile, they have to like watch themselves because their arm will just do something on its own. So you have to like view your lips as though they're capable of doing that. Yeah, my mom has a.
So I'm very, very late to the shiur, so this may have already been discussed. But was there a connection made to Lashon Hara at some point already?
It's actually interesting.
Okay.
We didn't talk about that as
Rivki brought it up a little bit.
Was that Rivki brought it up as an example of speech that could cause harm.
Oh,
But
okay.
that would definitely be in this category. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, but so I think that the essence of the Rבינו Yona here is in the technique he's teaching you. And not just Rבינו Yona, in terms of the way he's viewing the pasuk, is like your lips are like a thing. Like okay, imagine this. Like imagine, and this is a terrifying thought. Imagine that there was a disease where in the middle of the night while you were asleep, you would turn on your phone and like text hateful things to people in your life, So what would you do? You would find a way to lock up the phone or like to make it so that you couldn't activate it when you're asleep, Yet that's what happens with people with uncontrolled speech. They just say stuff that can like cause destruction, and so you have to like treat it as a real enemy. Yeah. Yeah, Rivki?
I just have to say that this
Yeah.
really reminds me of teens because their cortexes are not developed. And
yeah, definitely. And that's why it is so dangerous. I mean, I know there's been a lot of like, stuff about this, but like it is dangerous that, let's say, for example, like, mean girls, right? Like, gossipy teenage mean girls can torment each other on social media and through texting and stuff like that, which gives them like unlimited reach in terms of their abuse, the way that they abuse people. Like that's just like, that's something that just didn't exist back then. Like you actually had to like, talk to real people in order to like cause damage. Now it's even worse. Okay. Let's just do one more and then we'll call it a night. How about, I want to find one that's like Ariel's approach.
Wasn't the Matsuda stuff?
Yeah, but I want to find someone who like has some sort of chiddush in that area.
Maybe there aren't anymore. I'm just joking.
Okay, let's try this one. Malbim. Yesh hevdel ben peh. I'm not going to type this out. Yesh hevdel ben peh uvein safa. There's a difference between mouth and lips. Shesafa hu hadibur hachitoni. The lips are the external speech. So the mouth is the internal speech with chachma, with wisdom. There's a difference between noter and shomer. Shanoter hu yoser mina shomer. The noter is more than the shomer. Shanotzrehu b'shmira tamidis. That he guards the thing constantly. So he's taking it in terms of not like stronger protection, but like more vigilant, I guess. Umatzayir she'apev hasvasayim heim kechoma. Bitsura savi fenefesh. Okay, that's the opposite. So it's depicting the mouth and the lips like a wall and a fortress around the soul. V'sogrim ba'ada, and it shields it. Shelo yikarvu elaha tsareha v'oiveha, to not allow its tormentors and its enemies to besiege it, to approach it. V'lo levad shetzarich lishmor hasvasayim shem hachomos hachitzonos. Oh, I get it. Okay, so the lips are the outer wall. and the mouth, which is the way you speak with chachma, is the internal fortification. So he's saying, not only do you need to guard the lips, which are the external wall, sha'oyev omed savivam, that the enemies stand around, meaning enemies are closer to the lips, to the wall. So that means guarding yourself against speaking superficially without intelligence. You need to even guard your mouth, which means that even your speech in chachma should be with great care and great vigilance. As it says in Koheles, God is in heaven and you are on earth, therefore let your words be few. And that's going to cause you to guard your soul. You have a strong wall outside. Okay, fine. Someone who opens his lips wide, and that's the external wall. That's like opening like the gates to the the internal part of the castle. Mechita lo. It's a destruction for him. Mechita hu neged ha'oz v'mivtzar. Mechita is like is like a breach in the strength and the fortress. Even in Torah and in Chachma, you need to guard the openings of your mouth. And through this, you will guard your soul. But if you open up your lips wide to speak lashon hara and rechilus, and gossip, then it will damage your body. So the part about the lashon hara and the rechilus and the damaging your body, I think we already said. I think here, just to apply this within Ariel's idea, is even when you're speaking in chachma, you need to guard your soul. And there have been a lot of pesukim in the Meiri about this, but like what you say in philosophy can shape the way you think about things. Like I think an example of this is, let's say, like all of the language of like what's the word, like all of like the progressive language of like language of oppression and intersectionality and microaggressions, like all of these categories. It's in the like the very air that people breathe now. Like the way that people talk about things causes them to frame things in this way without even realizing it. So like you could get concepts in your mind, let's say like the concept that everything in life is about an oppressor and the oppressed. That type of vocabulary can get into your mind where you are automatically processing chachma in those terms, and like that's very obviously very dangerous. Or let's say like another example that I always harp on is like people use the phrase like living your truth, and that is treating truth as like a subjective thing, like your truth. I understand the idea of like living authentically or living in line with who you feel you are. And I'm not even saying whether that's good or bad, but I'm saying like that is not corrupting the idea of truth. But once you start talking about living your truth, you're dragging a certain idea of truth, of being a subjective thing, into the world, and like tainting the idea of truth. So like even when you're talking about things in chachma, you have to be careful to not allow the enemy to breach the inner fortification, because once it gets in, it's going to like wreak havoc in your internal palace. Okay, so let's review the ideas for tonight and then call it a night. This was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Okay, so we had Rivki's idea, which is for which we had a lot of strategies, which I didn't write down. So the main takeaway is be constantly vigilant about your speech, because all it takes is one wrong thing said in the wrong time to the wrong person in the wrong way, and it could cause total destruction. So we said, what's the chiddush? What's the new idea? It seems obvious. So the idea is that you can dial up your vigilance when you're in a high risk situation, but you can't do that because you don't always realize the high risk situations, and any situation can be a high risk situation. So the only solution is to practice guarding your mouth at all times, like the Malbim said, shmira tamidis, constant guarding, so that you will either be able to ramp it up when you get into the high risk situation, or at least you'll have a high level of guarding in general. So then we said, how do you do this? How do you practically? I really need to write these down. How do you do this? So I said several ways. So case studies, know your triggers, know your blind spots, plan ahead. What else do we say? Oh yeah, pause, right? Like literally pause, rehearse. So there are many techniques, but the point is that you need to practice these things before the game, not when you're actually playing the game. Okay. So then we had Ariel's idea, which is that this is only talking about the speech of your speech on the effect on your soul, which it can shape your ideas and your values and cause harm, whether through like awakening fantasies by talking about things that are prohibited, like the Mrs. David was saying, or talking about chachma in a corrupt way, like the Malbim was saying. So that's Ariel's idea. And then Rבינו Yona's idea was a new technique in undoing habit, which is to treat the body part that has the habit as if it has a mind of its own and regard it as an enemy who's trying to get you into trouble, you know, and then you'll take guards against it. You won't identify with it, but you'll guard against it in a way that you would guard against an external enemy. Yeah. And again, I'm saying, I know he's only saying this about lips. I think this could be applied to many other things. Like again, hands is another thing. Eyes is another thing. Like people who like look at what they shouldn't look at, or like pry into others' business. Like listening, like treat your ears as an enemy. That's like trying to So we should try this out and see if it works. But that's the technique. Okay, that was good. Good ideas. And as far as I know, next week, God willing, should be on. So continuing in chapter 13. All right, thanks for coming. Small crowd, but good crowd.
Yep. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Not Mishlei, so you can turn off the recording.
Okay, sure. I'll turn off the recording. Stop recording.